Welcome to West Virginia and Commonplace. Today, I have a special guest with me today. He is the guy that I've been talking up in our different forums and everywhere else. He is the audio guy.
Hello.
The audio guy hails from Colorado. I will let him tell you his name and please tell us about you.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, I'm Shaun Chapman. I'm an audio engineer out of Denver, Colorado. I've been doing it for about 10 years, starting with just recording my own bands and all that stuff. So doing audio engineering. I just started podcast editing in the last 2 years. And yeah, I still record bands. I still do live sound. I do other stuff too, like book shows, and I give lessons on mixing and other stuff like that.
And you do consultant work also. That's one major
Yep.
thing. You will consult a podcast on how to get their audio better and things like that. Where can
Yep.
they find you on the internet?
So my website is ShaunChapmanAudio.com. That's SHAUN, ChapmanAudio.com. And that's the best place. Or you can find me on, Instagram and Facebook at Shaun Chapman Audio.
Okay, and it's a lot of difficulty going into audio editing and stuff like that. I can say personally from my own experience, I'm a Mac guy, an Apple guy, so I GarageBand everything, which it
Yeah.
may not always be the best way to do things. And I use I use different mics. I use USB sometimes and other ones. A lot of the podcasts that I deal with, and you're aware of the content of questions that they offered out, have tons of questions that they would like answers to. If you don't mind, I would like to start off first. Each podcast that asks a question, I'm going to give them a quick shout out and I'm going to ask their question. I want to go over the basic stuff first.
Okay.
Subtly Seeking Spirit podcast. They ask, what's the best microphone to use to record a podcast from a laptop at home?
Okay. Yeah. So the best microphone, it kind of depends on your budget. I always recommend, and if you go to my website, I have under audio advice. If you click on that menu, I have podcast gear recommendations.
Okay.
But yeah, I recommend starting with a Shure SM58 microphone because that's the industry standard as far as music goes, and it's tried and true. It's been used forever. It's only $100. It never breaks, and it sounds good. It doesn't sound you don't maybe get as much clarity as like a condenser mic, but also those are going to pick up a lot more of the room sound. SM58s are a cardioid pattern, which means that it's directional, so it picks up mostly what it's pointed at. And it's just really versatile microphone. Some USB mics are okay, but I recommend getting an audio interface to use with your mics because you're able to use multiple mics at once more easily, and it's just, in the long run, it's just a better option.
And that's one thing that I definitely wanted to get into because of me and you struck up a conversation. I made an aggregated device with a bunch of microphones, and the sound was decent, but it was crazy.
How did you do that?
I actually I did it inside of GarageBand. I plugged up on the computer. I have a USB hub. I took 3 USB mics, plugged them into that hub on one end from the Type C. The second Type C that's on my laptop, I hooked another hub in and put another mic on there. It all sounded great until one major thing. I had to use the basic voice memo to record with. I couldn't use GarageBand or anything else because it was so much interference that it went kind of crazy. So voice memo, it was fine, but it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to because I wanted to have like a portable group setup that I could do. Now, another one of the basic questions. This one comes from Corey and Patricia of Corey and Patricia Talking Podcast. What's the difference between a dynamic and a condenser microphone?
Well, let's see. Technically, here, and I actually have written down a couple of practical definitions here. I'll start with that.
Okay, appreciate it.
Dynamic microphones operate by suspending a coil of wire connected to a diaphragm inside a magnetic field. When sound vibrates the diaphragm, the coil vibrates and produces an electrical signal. And a condenser microphone operates by vibrating a conductive diaphragm against the charged backplate to convert acoustic energy into electrical energy. So, that's the technical definition, but dynamics, especially ones like the SM58, that's a dynamic mic, it has a cardioid pattern, are great for close-up applications that don't require a ton of detail. They are particularly sturdier and don't require an external power source. They can also handle louder sounds without distorting. And condenser mics, they're just a little, they pick up a lot more detail, but they're more fragile. They pick up more of your room sound. So if you're in a dead room in a studio, condensers are probably ideal. But if you're just at your own place, then not necessarily, unless you have a really great treated room. But yeah, condensers can sound really crisp and detailed, and they do require phantom power. So your interface must have a phantom power switch, which most of them do.
Okay, because like in my instance, like I bought the first mic I started with was this little baby Samson condenser mic.
Yeah.
And I used it because I was on the go traveling, and I noticed a difference in the sound. And like I said, it had 3 different settings on it. And like I said, you're the audio guy. And I noticed each time I would change those different settings, I am not familiar with even the terminology for the settings. I can tell you real fast. One is a -10. One looks like a circle, and then one looks like a circle that goes like that.
Yeah, so that's going to be your phantom power switch.
Okay, all right. So that's what that was. All right. I'm not trying to sound ignorant or anything to the fact. It's just a lot of that stuff is foreign to me, and that will tie into the next thing that I want to talk about. What is the biggest mistake that people make when they're starting out podcasting?
See, the biggest mistake. Well, I mean, I would say a lot of people who don't think they need to do any editing on their podcasts. And I've seen this a lot, especially I think Joe Rogan has made that ideal. Kind of planted that idea maybe in a way, but I mean, Joe Rogan has a professional setup with really great mics and all that stuff. But yeah, learn how to edit your podcast or hire it out. And don't just record it and then just put it out into the world.
Okay.
Invest in some decent gear if you are able to. And like we were talking about before, USB mics are not ideal. Get an audio interface if you can. And that's just going to be better in the long run. And actually, a really big mistake that I've noticed is with some of my clients in the past has been not testing before you start recording. So you want to do a test, make sure that all your equipment is working before you start recording, because you can record a whole session and then realize that something went wrong, that you had a bad cable or something like that.
All right, so this right now, this is a question that's completely off the topic. This is a personal one, and I want you to tell me if I'm doing something wrong. Now, sure. I'm a little crazy about my audio because I do different things with my podcast. I host parties where I take a projector. It's like a little nebula capsule about the size of a can, and I listen when I record my podcast. I listen to my podcast in the car on just a regular little Bluetooth speaker that I carry around, and 2 different types of headphones, wireless and wired. I put it on the Xbox or the PlayStation on Pandora or something just to hear it through a TV. I listen to all those areas, not every single episode, but like every 3 episodes in case I change mics or do something different. Should you listen to your sound on different things?
Yeah, that's actually really, that's a good point. Yeah, you should do that. That's the best way to know, because you don't know what your listener is going to be listening to it on necessarily. So if you hear it in the car, through your TV, just, listen to it through all different sorts of speakers.
And I mean, like, I've gone as deep as and I'm showing you because we're doing a video. That's a Windows phone. I grabbed a Windows phone. I grabbed an Android, and an iPhone. Just those 3 platforms because I don't have a BlackBerry. But I even check all of those just because I know that there's one dude that has a Windows phone still left.
Yeah.
I check to make sure that you can hear it on all these devices. And one of my people that I do business with said I was a little crazy about that, but I said, really think about the
No.
sound.
Yeah, you're right. You want to get the best like sound for everyone. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now this one is a very broad question. This is from Bianca of Please Don't Kick Me Out podcast. Her
Okay.
question is what is a good, better, and best audio? And this is she put it. I'm doing these questions exactly how they wrote them. A best audio app or platform to use to record a podcast.
Okay, yeah.
And the last part of that, do you know of any that are budget friendly?
Yeah, well, as far as I think the question is about like DAWs, like what you're recording into.
Yes.
For me personally, I use Logic Pro. I'm also a Mac person, and Logic Pro it's kind of like the upgraded version of GarageBand.
It's the holy
Like,
grail.
yeah, but it's only $200, which is pretty good for a DAW. You can't use it with, you have to use it with a Mac, obviously, but it's a really great program for the price. It's really, really good. I know a lot of people, and this is if you're just recording and not editing yourself, Audacity is free. So you can just download that Audacity, Audacity, free program to record on, and it works just fine.
And I was about to dive into that because I know a lot of Windows users, and they ask me, people come to me with questions too. They always ask about that, and I tell them that on a Windows format, that's probably a very good way to go. The other thing that I dive into that I have two of my Canadian friends use, they use Adobe Audition for recording, and that after listening to it, and like I said, I'm not versed in audio like you are. To me, it seems like that platform there is really polished also.
Yeah, I know a lot of editors do use that, and I've seen in like Facebook groups that I follow. I've never used it personally, but I know a lot of professional editors do use it.
Okay, now let's do this. We're talking about a person on a budget real fast.
Okay.
And this is just to tie into things because you've seen that there was a lot of questions about a lot of different things. You already gave us the microphone. Could you give us an interface real quick that's not that expensive that would work?
Yeah.
And what else would they need to have a nice cheap setup if you're going to just set it up in your bedroom?
And just like I said before, you can anybody can go and check out my gear recommendations for my website, and I run you through everything, the cables, just every little bit. But yeah, as far as inexpensive interfaces that you can buy, if you want to start with the 2-channel, and it's like, I think it's like $100. It's called a Scarlett. It's by Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, and that works really well. You can do two separate mics as two separate tracks, and it sounds pretty good. It's got phantom power. You can hook up your headphones right to it as well.
Okay. And now let's go into the podcast booth. There was a lady, Jenna Stone, that is on Xander and Stone Podcast, the Science and Supernatural podcast. Her question is, how important is a podcast booth, and is there anyone to build one, or any way that you should build it, or is there another way that you could build it, like semi-build a podcast booth? So I'll rephrase that because it sounded a little confusing to me. How important is a podcast booth, and do you know anyone that could build one? And if you build one for someone, how expensive would one of those be?
Yeah, I see a booth is kind of overkill for your home setup. I mean, studios have booths, and it's really cool to have, but it is expensive. And yeah, you could build one yourself. It's just basically like a big box with, lined with foam. So it's just like a little dead room. Dead meaning there's no echo. And it keeps out external sounds. But yeah, it's kind of overkill for a home setup. I mean, if your room is somewhat noisy, use a cardioid mic like the SM58, because it's going to reject sounds behind it, and it's mostly just going to pick up, your voice. If you get a condenser mic and your room is noisy, you're going to have a lot of issues. You can get a mic, what's called a mic shield, which is like a stand that has foam that goes all around your mic, and that's not a room. That's just a little piece of, just a piece of metal and foam.
Okay. All right. Jessica from the Kentucky History and Haunts podcast has this statement. I have a cheap $50 mic from Amazon. It's actually not bad, but is there anything I can do as far as soundproofing the room so that she can improve the audio? And she's always hearing like this background noise with her mic.
Yeah. So if you're getting background noise, the best way to deal with that is to, what I was just saying, like get a mic shield, use a dynamic mic. But if you have it's just already in the recording, then you can use a noise gate plugin. And a noise gate basically means like the gate opens when the signal passes a certain volume. So like anything below the gate will be gone. So it cuts out quieter sounds. It's like a buzzing or anything like that. Also, if you have a lot of noise, a lot of that noise ends up being in the low end, like HVAC, which I recommend you try to at least turn off if you can, like your AC and your heat, turn it off. But if you can't, you can filter out the sub lows like below 80 hertz, and that will usually kill most of that. You can also sweep around the frequency spectrum and find where it is and then make a cut.
Okay. Now our next one is another bit about background noise, and this is one that I get from a lot of people, and I tell them I don't know how to do this. This one's from Liberated Ladies podcast. Mm-hmm. They would like to know, how do you edit the background noise that overlaps when you're talking?
Yeah, so it depends on how loud the noise is. You can use a noise gate to get rid of some background noise. You can if you use a parametric EQ plugin, you can boost the signal all throughout the frequency spectrum, find then like where the noise is on the frequency spectrum, and then make a cut. It's not always possible. The best thing to do is just treat your room if you can, or some people record in a closet if the room is too noisy. Yeah, but it works, and if the background noise is really loud and drowning you out, then there's not a lot you can necessarily do to get rid of it, unless it's in between you talking or something, because there's just not a really good way to get rid of it. I mean, If you use a dynamic mic, if you use a mic shield, you try to turn off your HVAC, try to record somewhere quiet. That's the place to start.
Okay, now just a general topic question about you, because like you've answered a lot of questions, and we got a ton more. What got you started in working with sound? What in your life made you want to become the audio guy?
Sure. Yeah, I started doing it when I was in bands about 10 years ago. And I don't know, I just wanted to, it's expensive to go into a studio, right? And I figured that I could actually buy like a cheap setup for less than the cost that I could, go into a studio and record. Of course, I wasn't getting as good of recordings and I had a learning curve, but I really had the drive to keep learning, and and then I started, took some classes and had my own little DIY studio set up, and yeah, that's how I just started being in bands and wanted to record my own music, and then like getting to really appreciate the not only the craft of the recording, but also the artistic side of it too.
Okay, I like that answer. All right, now we're going to go in depth a little bit more. People have a lot of questions about recording remotely. Yeah, and recording remotely. I get different hangups from people about Google Meets and using Zoom and various others. one podcast in particular, Aging Immaturely, wanted to know, what do you think is the best way for a three-way audio, a three-way interview to record remotely?
Well, I know that some of my clients use Squadcast, and that's another program that you can, like Zoom, but it's better audio quality, I believe.
Right.
Personally, what I do, because I have two podcasts, one of them is for local musicians and one is for just audio engineers. So
What
I
are
can,
those podcasts called, please?
All About Audio is one of them. And then Denver Music Community is the other one.
Okay. And people definitely go check those out. Where can they find them?
Well, they're linked up on Shaun Chapman Audio. They also, Denver Music Community has its own page, denvermusiccommunity.com. And you can find them also on Spotify or Apple Music, places like that.
Okay. Okay, good. That way people can know about you and get in touch with you. Now, Powerful Project Podcast, they had a question that's still in the same realm. When recording remotely, even with recording on two separate tracks, we still have an issue with it cutting out. We're not looking to be able to talk over each other, but it cuts out when we both are talking. Are there any fixes for that?
Well, it depends because like there are a million different reasons for that. So what I recommend is try checking every component in your chain, like test out the cables, each one at a time, swap it out with another cable, check the mics. Like you just have to check everything and do a process of elimination. And, if you have to get rid of something, you have to get rid of something. More often than not, it's a cable problem.
Okay,
So try that first.
And on that question, I want to say the Powerful Project, definitely get in contact with Mr. Chapman. He can help you out there.
Definitely.
With that one. Okay. Now this one is from Kenfluence Podcast. And his is kind of, you've touched on a few topics, but he said, I guess in terms of audio, what are indicators you're recording a clean, crisp sound? And are there advanced techniques to minimize audio feedback? And are there supplemental pieces of equipment that record for the highest recording quality? And I will say this, in what you said earlier, quite a few of those things he could go over to your website to find out.
Yes.
And I definitely will put that in there because you have answered a lot of questions. But I do want to ask you this about the audio feedback. What is one way that you could minimize that?
So if you're getting if you're getting a feedback loop, the best thing to do, and I recommend doing this anyway, is to wear headphones and ask your guests to wear headphones too. And then you're not nobody's going to hear their own voice and your voice. It depends on your setup, but you shouldn't get feedback if you are wearing headphones at all, because it's not going to create a loop, right? It's the feedback. I mean, the sound coming into your headphones isn't also coming out into the room, creating that feedback loop.
Okay. All right. This one is from the Happy Hour with the Hamilton Brothers podcast. What do you consider the best way to record a show online without sacrificing audio quality, like in a live setting? I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah. I also recommend, because I use Zoom simply because I usually interview people who have, audio equipment at their house. And so you can record, like I'll record into my DAW on my end and the guest will record into their DAW on their end and send it to me. And then it'll be a really good quality, even though it's Zoom. But yeah, if you don't have that option, then I would say, don't use Zoom, maybe use Squadcast. If you do a Google search, there are lots of platforms out there and new ones popping up all the time. I know some of my clients have used Squadcast and had good luck with it.
So can we dive back into this DAW? Can you explain that one more time for the audience? Because I learned something very valuable about audio, and that's why I was happy to have you on the show. I am a complete idiot when it comes to audio. There's so much that is encompassed. It's more than just getting on the mic and recording.
Oh yeah, it's years of figuring stuff out for sure.
So the DAW, what is that exactly, and how do we use that to properly record?
Yeah, so a DAW is a digital audio workstation. That's what it stands for. So it's just like your interface. So if it was, pre-recording on computer's time, it would be like, you would be recording onto a mixer that then goes to a tape deck, and that would be your workstation. But yeah, this is now it's software mostly. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's hard to just explain in a few sentences how to do it, but I'm happy to help anyone. I don't charge for advice. You can get on my website. I have a section called ask an audio engineer, and you can just ask me a question. I'll try my best to figure it out.
Right. And if these people want their podcast to sound better, you do editing, and with your consultant, you help mold the next podcaster to have skills, correct?
Yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Now, Common Mystics is another podcast. They had a question that I like also. They want tips for recording with multiple mics in the same room.
Okay. Multiple mics in the same room. Yeah, so that's not too difficult. Just everyone should have their own mic. So you should have an audio interface that reflects the number of people and that you're going to have in the room. So you have a separate track for everyone. That's really important. So use, one cardioid mic, one dynamic mic for each person in the room, and make sure everybody gets their own track, and make sure everybody is somewhat close to their mic. Mic technique is kind of important, and there are different ways to do it for sure, but if you don't want other people's vocal to bleed onto your mic, you have to get a little closer to the mic. The closer you get to the mic, the less room you're going to pick up, and the more mic you're going to pick up, more like dry signal you're going to pick up.
Okay. Inspired Chats podcast had one question, and this is one that I'm waiting on too, because we're all MacBook users and MacBook Air Pro, whatever. They wanted to know what is the best microphone to use with a MacBook, but let me throw something else in there. Windows and Mac. Does it matter about the microphone for each platform?
No, it doesn't make any difference which you're using. Obviously, you can't use Logic with Windows, but as far as the mic goes, it's not going to be any different.
Okay, so what is the best mic that you use? Like the mic that I see right now in this video. Is that the best mic you believe on the market right now?
This is the best mic I have for this purpose. Like
Oh,
I
for
have
podcasting.
mics
Okay.
that are great for kick drum, and I have mics that are great for guitar, but this one is great for. I actually got this pretty recently through Pro Audio Star. Is a pretty good deal. But this is an Electro Voice RE320. And these are really great. And I found it for under 200 when normally it goes for like 300. But it's a take on a classic radio mic called the RE20.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's meant for broadcasting. It's like a radio mic. But I recommend it. I mean, if you have all the money in the world, get yourself a Neumann U87. That's what, NPR uses.
Yeah. All right. So here's my next question. Memento Mora podcast wants to know what's the best way to soundproof a makeshift podcast studio. So what's a good way to soundproof your room?
Yeah, so that's very difficult to actually soundproof your room. There's you should treat your room, but to get it completely soundproof, if you're in a basement, that's great. But yeah, soundproofing is a different thing than sound treating. That means making sure nothing can get out and make your room completely dead. You would have to put so much into that. But I recommend, there's sound foam you can buy, and you can hang that on the walls, and that will deaden your space and create, prevent echoes in your room. And like I said, using mic shields. But unless your room is super echoey, don't worry too much about it. But if you're going to actually soundproof your room, that will take a lot of time and money.
Okay, that was a good answer for that one. Jump Cuts podcast had a similar question. They were trying to figure because they're on a limited budget. They used they wanted to know if foam panels or reflection filters would be the best way to start on a limited budget.
Whether you should use that on a limited budget, or what
Yeah,
was the question?
if you have a limited budget, would foam panels or reflection filters work?
Yeah, right. Yeah, foam filters aren't. Foam panels are not too expensive. You can get, and also on the website there is a recommendation there that you can click on, and you can even purchase it from the link.
Okay, so
Um,
definitely, guys, go over the Shaun's site over there. Now, here's one that got me going. Um, and I had this issue. I started out, and I wasn't naive, a little bit of an amateur. I recorded my episodes on the Anchor app, which from a cell phone, I was just testing it, getting my feet wet. Um, and some people actually use that. Casey of slipping to something uncomfortable. Her question is like Anchor. She had issues like timing issues with it because uh, the way that it records and the way that you hear it back, it seems delayed.
yeah.
If you had to recommend something portable, if you're on the go and you don't have the opportunity to set up the mic setup for everything, do you have a preference on uh, some type of app to record from your phone? And the only reason I ask this, and we both know that it's probably not the best way to go, but if you are in a hurry and with COVID and stuff like that, I've done episodes out in the park, and
Yeah.
I could tell the difference between the mic when I had the mic set up and when I had that Anchor one. It was a lot of distortion. So, what would you use portable wise if you're just recording, say, two or three people, on the go?
Sure. I mean, I understand why you would want the convenience of recording onto your phone. I mean, I can't recommend that you do that. um,
Right.
but it's also sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. And, if that's all the option that you have, then that's fine. But I mean, I know a lot of people that I've talked to have had really good luck with the Zoom recorders. So that's a portable thing you can carry with you and record that. I would recommend doing that instead of just right directly onto your phone. I mean, also you can get it's called an iRig, which is an interface for your phone.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you can plug a regular mic right into your phone and record it.
All right, so let me ask you the question. Let me wrap it up a different way.
Mhm.
If you have to record with Anchor or something like that, a good suggestion would be to have good editing software, correct?
Yeah, yeah. If you're gonna do it on a phone or record it that way, I would recommend definitely passing it along to somebody who knows how to do it, because there's a lot of EQ that needs to happen. Like, I mean, I can recommend certain ways to EQ a signal like that, because the phone signal, it's not going to be a lot different from, say, a Zoom signal. Um, but definitely learn how to use EQ and compression. Um, do subtractive EQ. Subtractive EQ is your best friend when it comes to getting rid of harsh or muddy um, parts of the frequency spectrum to make it sound, a lot more listenable.
All right, and I left these technical questions for the very end because it was a group of Malfi Media. They wanted to ask a few specific questions about EQing.
Yeah.
Their first question was, do you have any SM58 specific EQing tips?
I actually still sometimes use an SM58 for recording on podcasts, and it's so again, use a parametric EQ. Start on the left and work your way to the right. So you want to start off with a cut to the sub lows below 80 hertz, because your voice isn't gonna be down there. It's gonna be noise. Like, you don't want that. So cut that out. And then just like I said, do a sweep with a narrow Q of the whole frequency spectrum and find out, what sounds nasty, what don't you like, and then go ahead and make a minor cut and widen your Q. Because with an SM58, they're great, but you do want to boost the shelf on the high end just a little bit, and you probably want to cut out some of the low mids because there's typically some mud down there.
Okay, and once again with Mafia Media, like they were. I like their questions probably the best out of anyone. They asked this question personally to you: are you excited to see more 32-bit recorders like the Zoom F60 or the Zoom F2? And I meant to say
Yeah,
F6. I'm sorry, not F60.
that's okay. Yeah, I think those are cool. Maybe I'll eventually end up with one. I mean, as a field recorder or something, portable. I've noticed that some of the Zoom recorders have XLR inputs, which is great. Hook a mic and they have like a cool like kind of XY pattern thing going on. Yeah, so I think that's great that you can get really good quality recording in that portable of a small package.
All right, and they had a second part to the question. How do you see this changing the industry?
The Zoom recorders?
Yes.
I just think it'll make it a lot easier for people to, just to be mobile and to record anywhere without sacrificing quality.
Okay. Now, I want to thank you so much for answering all these questions. It was a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah.
So people can come over to your website, consult with you. You can help out here and there to get them aligned with proper sound, or what is the actual technical term for a good crisp sound?
Well, I don't know if there's one word for it, at least not that I can think of off the top of my head. Crisp is a good word. I like this mic because crisp generally means like it has a good boost in the high end. So I think a balanced would be a word. So you would have all, you would have your mids and your highs and your lows all dotted in, in a balanced way.
Okay, so we've done all that. It's a little point in the show, and I do this with everybody. You were actually the first person to be. I do split series inside of my podcast. You were on what we call behind the scenes podcast. That's what this is. This is the first segment for this. One thing I'm going to tie from West Virginia and Commonplace is this, and I didn't ask you this earlier because I can't prepare you for this. I've got a guy that in New York City, he's a rapper. He listens to all kinds of music, does all kinds of stuff. He can solve a Rubik's Cube in 40 seconds. I'm talking about
Wow.
boom, bam, bam.
Yeah.
Lady down in on the other side of Ohio from me, she goes out, buys paintings and different things like that, puts rhinestones on them, glitter, resells these things. Got another lady that if she hears the sound of a Coke can opening up, she goes ham, she goes crazy. She'll get out of her car, it'll ruin her day. So, Shaun, you are on the hot seat now. What is a secret or a hidden talent that no one knows about you?
Oh, man. Let me think.
All right, and while you're thinking, I'll throw a little banter out there about me. I'm from Virginia, but I hail from West Virginia now. And I go do all the Mountain Dew things like go on rock cliffs, climb in, do this and that, go to the beach, but I have a dark secret. I can't swim. I keep somebody with me that can swim because I know that they won't let me die, or at least they'll die trying, saving me. So that's my deep, dark secret and talent. Even though you see me in all these crazy places, I go to Lake Erie, I'm everywhere. I can't swim, so it's certain things that I won't do in the water. And I mean, I will get in the ocean, I will get into Ohio River, wherever, but I will make sure that I have someone that is qualified to swim with me. So, what's your secret or your talent?
I don't know. I'm sure that I do have a secret, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, other than being an audio engineer and a podcast editor and all that, I'm also a musician, and I like to make experimental music and like weird noisy music and stuff like that.
Okay, and then that's a talent there. Let me dig a little deeper and see if we can pull something. Do you have like a hobby or something that's different? Like I'll give you an example. A lot of people think I'm in the realm of video games. I'm a Nintendo guy. I have the Xbox, PlayStation, but I'm a Nintendo guy.
Yeah.
I actually do not enjoy the Pokemon games, and that's weird because most people play Nintendo, go Super Mario, go Pokemon, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Well, I like coffee.
Coffee?
That's kind of a hobby. I collect all kinds of coffee, different types of methods for making coffee. And, I like really good coffee.
Okay, that works for us. So, Shaun, once again, if you wouldn't mind, could you plug for us your website, where people can find you on social media, and can you give a shout out to anyone that has helped you along the way? Because behind every great person, just like you, there was someone, something, or some type of entity that helped us get to where we are today.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. So my website is ShaunChapmanAudio.com. If you want some advice, it's free. And I also have services such as podcast editing and mixing and mastering. Yeah, and I'm at Shaun Chapman Audio on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, as far as shouting someone out who has helped me along the way, I have a friend here in Denver. His name is Derek McGuire, and he is a really great musician and sort of, showed me the ropes before I took any classes or anything like that. And I wouldn't have progressed as quickly without him.
Okay, I want to thank you very much for coming on West Virginia and Commonplace. This
Yeah.
has been an amazing experience because you don't know how much you have helped the podcast community.
Oh, good. Well,
And
I love helping in that way.
all right, so thank you very much, and we're signing
Thanks,
off
man.
now.
All right.